Hi, this is Jonathan Leeman. Welcome to this episode of 9 Marks Pastors Talk. 9 Marks exists to help pastors build healthy churches. Learn more at 9marks.org. And if you want to help sponsor, assist what we do, go to 9marks.org/talk. Alex is the guy who usually writes, I'd say 2/3 to 3/4 of the questions I typically ask Mark Dever. But I'm going to ask Alex some questions today. Alex is, what is your title at Third Avenue?
Oh man, it's a doozy. I am the director of youth ministry and ecclesiology training. I am
Director of Youth Ministry and
proudly so.
Now you're an elder, a nominated elder?
Yes, I serve as one of the pastors of the church in the last month.
Are you a youth pastor?
I guess so. Yeah.
But that's not your title.
It's not my title, but it is. It's my
your
passion.
Function. Also with us, we have Mark Feather. Once again, welcome back, brother.
Thank you so much.
Mark is a pastoral assistant. That's his title.
Yep.
At Capitol Baptist Church. He is a lay elder.
Correct.
And he is Mark Dever's conciliary on the doctrine of the Trinity.
Happy to serve that way.
Are you a youth pastor?
Once again, not in my title, but I do pastor youth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Guys, our topic today is youth pastoring or youth groups or something like that, because both of you do that work. Alex, you at Third Avenue, Mark, you here at CHBC. And Alex, have we ever done a conversation? Have I done a conversation with Mark on this topic? I don't think I have.
I have routinely offered it as an idea, and we'll just say one of you has stiff-armed the idea into oblivion. but now Mark is. I don't know where Mark is.
The cat's away.
So I guess you told me.
The mice
you
will
came
play.
on my lawn and told me to come here. So I'm a little bit surprised this is happening, but I'm happy. I'm happy about it.
And I should publicly thank you before all our listeners for the amazing work you do in helping me come up with questions week after week. So, brother, I am very, very grateful. And listeners should know so much of what Pastors Talk is, well, first of all, it was Alex's idea. And second of all, he really does give a lot of the substance to it in terms of the questions that I ask. So grateful for that. First question, brothers, is the youth group the church, a program of the church, or a parachurch ministry? Feather?
Oh, man. That's a good question. So it's not the church. It's not identical with a congregation. Is it a parachurch ministry?
Or a program of the church?
Yeah, I don't think it's a parachurch ministry. I would probably say it's a program of the church. It's something that CHBC does. In our case, we have other churches who send their kids to us. And so in that way, we might function as a parachurch ministry for other churches. But at CHBC, it's probably a program of a church.
Alex, anything to add? Are you happy with that?
No, that's basically it. I mean, you could devise an arrangement where it's more parachurchy, but yeah, similar to what Mark said.
But you said it's not the church, and so often it feels like youth groups become a church within a church. Is that an accurate observation on my part? And what do you do to keep it from becoming that?
I certainly think it can compete with a broader congregation at times, and it can feel like there's grown-up church that people do on Sunday mornings, and then the youth group does their own thing. Yeah. And so certainly at CHBC, one thing that we try to do, and I should say before I say anything else, anything helpful that I'm saying is just me channeling Charles Hedman, who basically set up our youth ministry here.
We should call him.
That's right. I know we should have, honestly. We could have two guys on Zoom.
We could.
I could have been sitting over there. It would have been great. But anyways, here I am with my Mario shirt. So it can compete with the broader church.
Oh, you brought the youth group.
I know. That's
youth
right.
Shirt.
It's for the youth. That's right. All the youth who listen to Pastors Talk. Enjoy.
There are dozens of us.
That's right.
Dozens.
So anyways, how do I keep at CHBC the youth group from competing with the broader church? Well, first and foremost, we never have youth meetings that will compete with any large group gathering of the church.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
That's right. So we understand our main youth ministry to be Sunday morning service with the rest of the saints. That's where the word is preached, where we gather with the saints and get to be built up in that. We do an additional meeting on Friday nights where we get to think a little bit more about the word and maybe some specific issues that are particularly apropos for youth today.
You don't want to compete with the church because you want those youth, those junior hires and high schoolers to understand, friends, this is not the main event. The main event is the church.
That's right.
The main means of discipleship in your life, should you choose to repent and believe and follow Christ, is not what happens on Friday night. It's the gatherings of the church.
That's right.
And that needs to be utterly clear in those junior higher and high schooler minds, whether they're Christians or not, baptized or not. This needs to be clear to them.
Amen.
All of this is pointing toward the main event, which is the gathered, covenanted church. I do understand, though, you guys have a Sunday school class for youth. So that's kind of interrupting a church thing, no?
So yeah, once a year we have, for a 13-week stretch, that's how long our core seminars go, we have a youth-specific core seminar, and that would just be one track among many. So we're not competing with other gatherings of the church. We're just one other option for youth.
Yeah, right. Alex, how do you try to help your youth realize this isn't the church? This is a program of the church. This is prep for the church, but it's not the church. What do you do along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, apart from just saying it probably in half the sermons I give, just explicitly, yeah, I mean, we do some of the programming stuff that Mark's describing. And then also, I mean, you would have to be really unversed on what the church is to mistake what happens at Third Avenue from 7 to 9-ish on Wednesday night as the church. Like, it has a decidedly different feel. Like, it is, I don't mean to say that it's childish, but I do mean to say that it's not like overly somber or serious. We don't sing, though when I was in New York City as a youth pastor, we did sing. So like, we don't even have all the elements for a church gathering there. I think some people can say what we're saying right now, youth group is not the church. And that might give them some like unstated or latent excuse to like make it less important. And I think it's not any like, it's less important than the church, sure, but you can still get some really, really good ministry done at stuff that's not the church.
So Jonathan, stop being such a negative Nelly.
Well, I just am like, yeah, it's not the church. It's also, it's not a football game. It's not a funeral. It's not 100 things.
But we can do
a really great job at what we're trying to do. And honestly, we can have a lot of flexibility with what we're trying to do. Because it is a program. It's not in the Bible, strictly speaking. So we can adapt our approach according to congregation, according to the specific needs of the kids. We can just have a lot more freedom to be creative, to be flexible in a way that I would just not at all encourage, churches broadly to adopt.
I'll come back to that creativity in a second. I think what's behind my questions and why I'm pursuing this is my own personal experience. And so this is kind of me projecting.
You grew up in megachurch land like me.
Yeah.
Where it was that way.
Exactly. And so this is me projecting onto everybody what my own experience was, where I was a part of the youth group in junior high and high school. And I was even 1 year or 2 years, I was like a leader, quote unquote, the junior class leader, whatever, in youth group. I don't think I was a Christian in that time. And because I was in a church context that didn't teach about the church, that didn't seem to attend to matters of membership and so forth, or maybe they did. Maybe I didn't have ears to hear. It's entirely possible. I think I thought the youth group was basically the main thing, right? And I don't know that I was ever taught otherwise. And so that's why I'm wanting to make this distinction so clear. So Alex, you said in about half your sermons, you'll say something like, give us an example. What will you say? Pretend you're talking to us as high schoolers. What are you going to say?
Well, hey guys, no. I mean, it could be a stray comment, just like, we're here to, well, part of it is I try to make our Wednesday night gatherings very evangelistic, and I actually try to make it, I do want it to be the main thing for their unsaved friends that they go to school for. And church on Sunday morning is not even in the realm of possibility. It's not even on the table for them. So if youth group becomes the quote main thing for an unsaved, 15-year-old whose friend drags him to youth group, I'm thrilled about that.
For
so
sure.
Just by me explicitly just saying, bring friends, asking them who they're bringing, asking them, constantly, they're going to understand Now, of course, I'd be happy for them to bring friends to church too, but they're going to understand that this thing is a little different than the thing that we do on Sunday. Now, of course, we're sharing the gospel at both gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just that element to it where I am explicitly addressing kids who maybe didn't grow up in a Christian home in my sermon, even though I know 85% of the parents in the room are members of our church.
Yeah.
So like, it just has a different. It just the applications I'm making are just obviously pitched not only to like this is where you get your tooled up discipleship for a 15-year-old. It's not really the only thing we're trying to do.
Mark, how do you approach this
In terms of
clarifying the distinction between what church is and what the youth group is, and then kind of what Alex alluded to is trying to reach non-Christians, especially. How do you think through these things in your teaching?
Yeah, part of that clarity is just explicitly explaining what the church is and what we're doing here. So as we're walking through a passage, we're thinking, hey, so in the various churches that you're a part of, understanding this isn't a church, and the church you're a part of, this is why you guys might do this.
And you'll say that. You'll say just that.
Yeah,
or
that's
something
right.
like that.
Sure. Yeah. And then, beyond that, certainly clarity with the gospel. I think I could be better at, I think Alex is especially good at making the group evangelistic. I think our group, we have a lot of kids from Christian homes, and every once in a while they'll bring non-Christian friends. I'm probably not as good at encouraging the students to bring their non-Christian friends. So that's something I should take away from this conversation. But certainly clarity on the gospel whenever we're getting together. I have a dear youth volunteer who, after one of my talks, gave me some really good feedback. He said, Mark, I don't think they need more theology. I think they need to be told the gospel and invited to Christ. And I was like, oh man, that's a good word. So I try to be super clear whenever we get together about the gospel.
When you're applying, you're saying, I know both of you guys teach texts, preach texts. I don't know what word you'd use, but teach or preach texts. And I presume you're applying them to the youth. What are you thinking through in your applications that you wouldn't think through, you think through differently when you're preaching the church?
Anything off the top of your head, Alex?
When I'm preaching, here, I'll give you a point of contrast. When I'm teaching in the church, I'm thinking mostly members, mostly Christians, but some non-Christians. So I'll speak to both, but mostly Christians. And I'll think through different categories and stations of life of those Christians. And I'll try to apply the text to them. That's my goal. Is it different when you're preaching a youth group?
No. If you say it like that, I don't think so. But so I served in New York City for 2 years as a youth pastor, and
in Queens.
Yeah, about 2/3 of those kids didn't have two Christian parents. Some of them had zero Christian parents. So the application I was doing there is very different than what I'm doing here, where I would say 4 out of 5 kids that will be here in a couple hours, both of their parents are members of a church, usually our church. And so I am pretty regularly in my applications trying to help them maybe resolve an unarticulated tension that they have in their minds of, am I a Christian or am I just a well-behaved kid? And so if I can find that in a text, I'm going to pull at that string. And it's going to be a different thing according to the text. So tonight I'm doing Exodus 19 and 20. And one of my points is that God's law is total, meaning it's not just outward. It's not just about your outward behavior. It's about your deeds, and it's about your thoughts, and it's about your words. And essentially it's about your heart. And so one of the things I'm going to say tonight is, if you are only trying to be moral so that your parents or your teachers or your coworkers, affirm you, then that's not I'm not saying stop doing that, stop being moral. I'm just saying that's not evidence necessarily that you're a Christian. There's more to it than just, I am a good kid on the outside. And so those are things I probably wouldn't say as clearly if I were teaching to a church. I probably wouldn't pull on that string as long or as emphatically.
As often.
Yeah. So that's the main one. But it was something different in New York City where half the kids went to public school. And if I'm going through the 10 Commandments, I might literally have to be having sex with your girlfriend is a sin. Despite what, despite what the normal behavior is among your peers. I'm probably not going to have to make that point this evening because I think I just know the subcultures that these kids live in. So it's just
But I
different.
appreciate what you're doing in your application example is you're trying to clarify again and again the line between faith and unfaith. And on unfaith side of the line, it can look like a good kid from a Christian home and still be an unfaith,
Oh, yeah.
unbelief.
Oh, totally.
And you're trying to clarify that line. Any thoughts from you, Mr. Feather?
I mean, certainly I think a larger proportion of the group, simply because they're younger, and I don't mean this as a negative category, but there's going to be a greater degree of ignorance within that group. And so there's going to be ignorance of their own hearts. They're not sure if they're Christians or not.
Yeah.
And so as you're teaching the law, you're teaching it in such a way that we can see like, oh, actually my life is more characterized by sin than it is by righteousness.
Yeah.
It's also for younger Christians, hey, this is how the law is applying in your life. And so this is what it looks like to be a Christian in your particular context. It can also look like, basic Bible study skills that they maybe have not learned yet. So all those sorts of applications are going to be, aimed especially at those who are just unlearned in those things. And then it would just be helping them see gospel connections that they might not have seen before, giving them categories when they're reading the Bible of seeing like, oh, this is how Christ fulfills this. And this shows us yet another way in which we need the Lord. All sorts of things like that.
How does a church's approach to meaningful membership influence your approach to youth ministry?
At least for us, what it means is that we're really careful not calling the students Christians unless a church is affirming them as such.
Unless they've been baptized into.
That's right. So unless a church has baptized them and taken them in as a member, we want to be really careful not to give an assurance simply because we ourselves, we don't have the authority to do that. That's what the church does. But I do trust there's probably a good chunk of our group who I think are probably believers, and they're just not at the stage where a church has been able to affirm that profession of faith yet. Mm-hmm. And so for them, I'm simply encouraging them, whether you're a non-Christian, whether you are a young Christian, keep running to Jesus. And so keep doing that. But yeah, being really careful about not giving people the label of Christian before a church does that.
Alex, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, our practice is a little different. We don't withhold baptism until they've got a, MDiv or PhD. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Jonathan will probably cut that. It's not as though, like, I understand ontologically that it is a light switch from non-Christian to Christian. Like,
we all agree.
I went to seminary. I got that. But in your communication, there's all sorts of helpful gradation you can use that's shy of Christian, that doesn't make every kid who's not been baptized feel like, they're like a reprobate. So like language I often use will be like, I assume most of you, maybe all of you, mean to follow Jesus. You're trying to follow Jesus in your school, which a non-Christian can be trying to follow Jesus. And their failures might be more prominent, or it's more half-hearted.
You're identifying an aspiration. You're not identifying a status.
Exactly.
In that
and
phrasing.
but because my church practices meaningful membership, I don't feel as nervy about the question of wrongly assuring them because of the way that I speak. They understand what it means to follow Christ. So meaningful membership really does give guys like me a lot of help. If I was a youth pastor in a church that was really loosey-goosey on membership, I'd be real nervous that just like the broader momentum of the church could unhelpfully sweep kids and apply the assurance to them for years while they're still in my ministry that I would not personally want to give them, that would not make me super, super pumped. That could be a really frustrating thing, I imagine.
I remember years ago when I was an elder at CHBC, and I don't think it quite yet had a youth group. There weren't enough youth, but they were starting to show up. More and more teens were starting to show up, and when the elders discussed what we should do, and we thought through different options, but one thing that was clear, and I think my memory's correct on all of this, so somebody listening might think, well, that's not how it happened, but this is the best of my recollection. Before we actually did anything official, Mark started encouraging more regularly, more consistently, the congregation to pray for the youth, for the teens, and finding ways to encourage them to pray that we as adults in the church would take an interest in one another's teens and recognize the opportunity to disciple them that we possessed. In other words, before we even thought about a quote-unquote youth pastor or dedicated worker, hey, let's just think about all the parents and adults in the room. How can they be discipling these kids? And I really appreciated that primary emphasis. I guess my question for you, brothers, is how do you involve parents? What is the relationship between parents and the work that you do in your youth ministry capacity?
So certainly here, the big idea is that parents are the primary disciplers of their children, and the youth group is merely one tool that parents can use to do spiritual good to their kids. And it's an especially programmatic way.
And that's taught at CHBC in multiple places, multiple times.
Very much so. And it's just a programmatic way of helping church members get to know some of the youth of the church and try to do them spiritual good. And so it's just one vessel or vehicle for that.
This is not a replacement of your work, merely a supplement.
That's right. And so I'll try to email the parents every week. This is what's going on with youth group. Okay. If we're studying something, I'm sending the small group questions to the parents so they know what kind of things we're thinking about, and it can inform their conversations with their youth as well.
That's great. Alex?
Mark's still in his early years.
You gave up on those emails a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be honest here, not lie on this, stately platform. I don't do much. I used to do all that stuff. I realized none of it was being read. So it was literally, I was just creating busy work that made me feel like I was kind of establishing, like kind of checking this quota that I am not the primary discipler. I am, but their parents are.
Whereas now you think you are the primary discipler.
No, I'm just saying I don't send an email to like codify something that's pretty obvious. Not that that's what you're doing, Mark. I love you.
Thanks, brother.
So I don't really do much other than like specifically, it's much more reactive. So like if a kid just seems to be not doing well, for whatever reason, I mean, of course, the first call or text or email I'm going to send is to their parents. I'm just I'm paid by the church to do a number of things, but one of the things is to kind of keep a closer watch on their kids in a setting that the parents aren't. And I haven't had. I mean, in New York, I really did nothing with the parents because many of them were unsaved. So I was like kind of the quasi parent. And here, I think by God's grace, our church gets the kind of distinction we're describing. And so I don't feel like I have to whip their parents into this like discipleship mood because they're already doing it.
They're in that posture.
I'm actually more trying to get my middle schoolers and high schoolers to disciple the 5 to 10-year-olds and like take them out. Like if I'm confident in how those folks are doing, I want to set before them, like, you don't just need to be a follower and be poured into. Like you have a lot to offer your peers, of course, who don't know Jesus, but I'm thinking even kids who are like my kids' age. So I hear stories all the time of like our juniors and seniors taking an 8 or 9-year-old out to breakfast and just getting to know them, talking to them about, could be silly things, but also about the Lord. So like, I assume their parents are also encouraging them to do that, but like, so I don't have a fully, I'm sure like my family ministry class in seminary would give me an F if I wrote that on a paper, but I think boots on the ground, when you really start doing this ministry, if you're in a healthy church that kind of understands these categories, there's not a lot of like, other than like, here's where we're meeting for camp.
Yeah.
that I feel like I'm doing. Now, what do you think about that? Jonathan, as a parent of a kid in youth group age, what do you think about my answer? Are you like, this guy's lazy?
Well, I think you're relying on the fact that it's utterly clear to most members of your church that the parents are primarily responsible, that that's being taught, and you are perceiving that they undertake that, which I think is, So I think everything you're saying is absolutely fine. I do think that thing needs to be reinforced less almost by you, Alex, and more by your pastor, say Greg, and anybody else in the pulpit. Right. That's where that message needs to be communicated again and again. Parents, This is your job. Right. And I think insofar as you're sending them emails like Mark does, I mean, that can only help. If you recognize nobody's opening these emails, then I appreciate what you're saying. That's just busy work. Stop doing it. But that's a pragmatic decision. Right. So,
how are you at opening emails these days, Jonathan?
Not so good. Not so good. Well, like Mark,
Yeah.
Emails come from my kids' Christian school.
Sure.
I'm not very good at reading them.
I understand, brother.
So,
It's okay.
But I don't want you to stop.
Yep.
I want you to keep doing what you're doing because I trust it is helpful for people. Okay. How do you get kids then interested? I love the way, Alex, you talked about you're getting them even think about discipling younger kids. But for both of you, how do you get kids interested in engaging with God's word?
Teach it a lot. Don't ever stop. Don't ever think you have a better idea. There's just there's no better way you can spend time together when you're with Christians or even aspiring Christians is to open up God's word and just try to explain it. So I'm just constantly confronting them with it, whether we do have a Sunday school hour that's actually, it runs all year. And so we do some, what was it called? Inductive Bible study. So we do some of that, but my Wednesday night sermons, or if it's a youth leader teaching, they're just always, they've got the Bible open, they've got, and it's going to be more interactive. So I would say the main difference between what I would do tonight and if I were preaching the same sermon on Sunday morning, and I probably could preach the same sermon, but tonight we'll have some back and forth interactive. Look at that. Answer this question for me. Why do you think that is? But 3 points of a sermon tonight are God's law is terrible, total, and temporary. Some people who don't think the Mosaic law is temporary are going to get mad at me, but whatever. So I'm going to ask them before I explain it, why do you think I'm using that word? Because we've already read the passage, just to kind of see what their like almost impressionistic take is on a passage so that we can tweak it together. So I just do a ton of stuff like that. And if you do that 40 weeks out of the year for 45 minutes and then supplement it with other things,
your lessons are 45
it's just
minutes?
It's probably like if I were preaching my manuscript, it would probably be 25 or 30 minutes.
Okay, but because
there's
you're
a
engaging.
lot of
back and
because
forth.
there's back and forth, it just takes longer. And sometimes I go on rabbit trails, but yeah. So I just think you just engage it, like confront them in a happy way with the word that they can understand it.
Yeah, for real. Anything to add to that?
Certainly double down on the teaching part. Our group 2 has a lot of interactive teaching, so I'm asking questions of the youth. I think clarity is a really important thing, so I give them my outline so that they can track along. It just kind of gives them a clear through line for the passage. I'm asking lots of questions, especially about how to apply different things. So I find if you're able to explain the general principle of a text, I think the students actually have really good interactions with it and see how it's immediately applicable to their lives. So we're going through Genesis right now. We're in the Joseph story, so Sam and Mahdi rejoice. But anyways, we're going through it, and it's the kids are just eating it up because there's a lot of good stuff for them. We also have small groups that meet right after my big group lesson, and they go deeper into application questions.
So how long did you go through Genesis? I just finished it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we have 16 meetings a year, and so we're 2 meetings away from finishing it.
Guys, we're at 31 minutes. I want to wrap this up within a few minutes, but there's one huge area we've not explored. I wonder if we can do this concisely, and that is the area of, as I'm sitting and listening to you, it's just like, okay, you guys just sit around and teach. Do you have any fun? You don't want to make youth group boring. All we're talking about, shouldn't you do some fun things? What do we do? Is that bad?
Well, talking to me is fun.
Oh, no, without a doubt.
Totally agree, brother.
Well, so when I was in youth group,
you're going to say Chubby Bunny.
Chubby Bunny.
There it is.
It's so lame, but it was kind of fun.
We've been doing this too long, man.
Do you know what Chubby Bunny is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I tell the kids that I have 2 jobs. I have 2 jobs as your youth pastor. It's to have fun. I literally get paid to have fun with you, and I also get paid to take you seriously. And so so tonight in 2.5 hours, kids will start showing up, and the first hour of what we're doing has no obvious spiritual value. Like we're going to be playing Gaga Ball, we'll be playing various versions of Capture the Flag. It's actually nice outside, so maybe we'll do something outside. We'll have food, like we'll hang out. It is just fun. Sometimes there's a game. and then I'll do like a little hello time and meet some guests if there are any, and all of that. I think I've told you this before, Jonathan. It's like I'm trying to be like a pastor mixed with like Jimmy Fallon. We're having fun. We are here to have fun, and then it will click about half-ish way through around 8 o'clock to serious time. Now I don't mean like overly serious. I just mean like there's a different gear shift that happens. Where the sermon will begin, and then similar, like Mark said, we'll have discussion time. So I think you build into every regular gathering a fun, like it is fun. Like it's not probably equally fun for every kid, but it is fun. It means to be fun. It doesn't mean to be rushed and like we got to do everything serious, all the time.
Right.
And even for stuff like youth camp, I tell the parents, like, we are not going to youth camp to like get your kid saved or to hear excellent sermons. We will hear sermons. They may or may not be excellent. The Lord knows. We are going to youth camp to have fun for 4 days. And that's what the Lord will do with it. Who knows? But I'm confident that the relationships that we build and the fun that we have for 4 days is actually going to bear longer term fruit than them like halfway staying awake through a sermon because they, were up till 2 a.m. eating sour Skittles. So like, I'm just very explicit about the fact that like, this is, not like dad driving the car to vacation. Like, this is supposed to be fun, but like, this is fun. Like, we're here to have fun. And it kind of, I think if all the leaders, youth volunteers get that, it just kind of, it happens. It takes a little time probably, but it happens.
Yep. Mr. Feather?
Similarly, what we aim for, fun, friendship, faith. And so fun, the first 45 minutes of our time together, eating pizza, hanging out, playing games. Sometimes we'll have whole nights where we just play laser tag or go to a theme park, whatever it might be. And we trust that's a good thing in itself. It also ties to friendship, forming those relationships where, Lord willing, it produces or at least supplements and works towards faith. I think that with all that said, I mean, there is a real danger of making fun the only or even the main thing that you do. Yeah. But I think in churches that probably listen to pastors talk, that's probably not the danger.
Come on. Come on now.
I had a youth give me a backhanded compliment. He's in 2 youth groups, and he said, the other youth group was a lot more fun, but your youth group's more helpful. And I'll broadly take that, though I want to grow in fun too.
That's good. Brothers, what did I not ask you about that you wish I'd asked about?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, you didn't ask about volunteers. You didn't ask
about... I know. That's all.
9 Mark's resources.
I know. Hey.
Wow.
Oh, look at this. How does discipling help?
You want to do spiritual good to your students. And so helping volunteers recognize how to do that. And then also, as Alex was saying, helping youth realize how they can do that with others.
That's Mark Dever's book, Discipling How to Build.
Let me just say, the number one thing you should look for in volunteers is folks who want to do that with their free time. So more than anything else is guys and gals who just are eager to hang out with a 12 to 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost paid to like have less time to do that in my normal course of life. But, it's just, nothing more encouraging than when I show up at a coffee shop and I see Ethan and Corbin together reading the Bible.
Why should somebody who works with youth read Michael Lawrence's Conversion?
Alex, you get it, man.
Because I'm a Calvinist and you should be too. And total depravity is real. And so is irresistible grace and unconditional election. And when we hold out the finished work of Jesus as explained in the scriptures, that's really the only confident thing we can do if we actually want people to come to Christ. So if you don't understand the problem, you're going to have a bad solution. And that book will give you clarity on the problem and the solution.
Amen. And what about Evangelism by Max Stiles? Why should those who work with youth, pastors, generally read this?
I think it's good for churches generally, especially with the youth group, just recognizing though parents are often going to be the primary ones sharing the gospel with their kids, they need a whole village to be sharing the gospel. We do it as a team sport. And then also in terms of inviting kids to youth group and the like, yet another way that we participate in the mission of God in the world as we get to share the gospel with others.
Guys, great conversation. Thank you.
For more articles, books, and podcasts, please visit 9marks.org.